Let us pray. God, perhaps there has never been a time in history when we have not needed your tender mercy. We need it now. We need to prepare new ways for your presence in our world and in our lives. Give us light and give us peace. Amen. On Friday morning, while I was having some routine blood work done, I had a wonderful conversation about life and about hope. The person I spoke with just happened to be waiting at the same time I was waiting, came a little bit behind me and tapped me on the shoulder because I was on my smartphone, and we engaged in conversation. I asked his permission whether I could tell this story, and he said, sure. It was Brian McNeil, and Brian has been going through some significant medical issues in the last little while. So we talked about a number of things: doctors and hospitals, family, and God. And how very much more in focus these topics become after you've been in hospital for a while. Brian said something very profound, something that he had learned long, long ago and keeps relearning. He said, how can we not believe in God? How can we not have hope and peace when you simply hold a baby in your arms? The miracle of creation. In this child, this beautiful, awe-inspiring, life-altering creation, this creature, this child. Now, our conversation might have continued, but our numbers were called, his to the register and mine to get my blood work done. But I thought of Zechariah holding his child, John, in his arms. You child will be. Zechariah, a priest, a member of the elite, a man who is literate, a man who stands out in that time, in that place. But when at the beginning of Luke, when we find out that Elizabeth and Zechariah, who are old and who are barren, are about to have a child, he questions it. The Archangel Gabriel, imagine, he questions the Archangel Gabriel, and after all, he's a priest. He should at least be used to that. Well, maybe not used to it, but have as part of his story, part of the narrative of the faith, that possibility that God does interact with God's people through archangels. And it's interesting in this story that Zechariah ends up being punished for his disbelief, for his moment of doubt, and he is mute. Some people say deaf as well, for 9 months. And it's not until there's this dispute about naming this child that he's able to speak, and he comes up with this wonderful prophecy and blessing. But imagine that. And in contrast, Mary, who has similar disbeliefs, is not punished in the same way. There's a contrast, and there's something to think about in that particular story. But in this particular piece, this disrupts his entire life. Not only an unexpected pregnancy, but also he is no longer able to work. And I don't think the temple had real good short-term and long-term disability plans. at that time. Today is the 98th anniversary of the Halifax explosion. It's also the anniversary of the Montreal massacre. And we continue to be confronted with the stories of violence that are all around us in the U.S. and around the world related to terrorism, to guns. We need this Sunday more than ever. We need this Sunday of peace. Randall Mixon writes, Advent continues, our ruminations go deeper. We wait, watch, wonder if we will ever know peace. Will we find peace in our souls? Will there be peace on earth? Peace is the traditional theme for the second Sunday of Advent. Not just peace as the absence of violence, but peace that passes all understanding. Peace that heals and makes whole. Peace that's encapsulated in the Hebrew word shalom. Peace that allows the wolf and the lamb, according to Isaiah, and the leopard and the kid to lie down. Peace that allows a little child to lead the people and bring them back into full communion with God. Peace that ensures that there will be no more hurting or destruction on God's holy mountain, because the whole earth will be full of the knowledge of God. The Benedictus is Zechariah's great hymn that we heard today, a hymn of prophecy, praise, and blessing. It moves us towards an unfathomable, whole, creation-healing peace, shalom of God. Here we find ourselves waiting and watching for something that we deeply desire, wondering if it will ever come. We may long for peace, but we know that we live in a world in which there is much too little of it, both personally and socially and politically. Tom Wright has an interesting take on Zechariah. He says, often it's the old people, the one who cherish old memories and imaginations, who keep alive the rumor of hope. Zechariah comes across in this passage, especially in the prophetic poem, as someone who has pondered the agony and the hope for many years, and who finds the two just bubbling up and out of him as he looks at awe at this child in his arms. Surely Zechariah's season of being mute leaves him with time to wait, watch, and wonder. He has time to consider the long arc of his life and how it has been disrupted by the sudden appearance of the holy at a time and a manner that he was not expecting. In the midst of this naming crisis, he finds his voice, and he speaks about what this child will become. He's God's gift. God is gracious, is what John means. He will be integral to fulfillment of the ancient prophecy of how God will redeem his people, and then we just need to follow the story and participate in it. John becomes that bridge that calls people back to God, that calls them to be forgiven, calls for them to return. How much do you know about the Hawaiian hotspot? Other slide. Fire is another theme for this Sunday, refining fire. It's been burning under the Pacific ocean for millions of years. And out of that fire has come new land and new life. This new land has grown, shifted, and eventually has formed what we know as the Hawaiian Islands. A place where it all begins is what's called the Hawaiian hotspot. Liquid lava from volcanoes that form over the hotspots is released on the ocean floor and hardens and builds up over thousands and thousands of years until it breaks through the surface of the ocean. These volcanoes are known as shield volcanoes because they consist of very fluid lava flows that produce gently sloping mountains. The lava flows down the mountain and the land mass expands. And as time goes by, the upper layers of the Earth's crust, the tectonic plates, shift, and the newly created island moves away from the hotspot. And the hotspot is once again covered by seawater, and the whole process begins again. There are more than 100 islands that are considered part of the Hawaiian Islands, but there are 8 main islands in the chain. Hawaii's island, also known as the Big Island, is close to the hotspot and has 5 active volcanoes, and this is Kiliali. I'm really not doing great with the translation, probably. But this is where the picture is from. Now, there's a new island that's being born. And the new island is Lahaui. And it has been going on, and new is relative because it started 400,000 years ago. And it will be tens of thousands a year before it actually breaks the surface. And it will become Hawaii's newest island. So I was thinking about the sense of hotspot. Judea in the time of Jesus, I want to suggest, was a hotspot. It was a land occupied by a foreign army and had been for centuries, filled with political tensions and religious factions, all wanting peace, all hoping for the Messiah, all hoping to be freed. But at the particular time that Jesus arrives, the people were poor, they were hungry, they were dispossessed. And from this cauldron came energy for change. I may not have known what type of change they want, but out of this cauldron there bubbled forth the possibility of change, of different kinds and from different sources, to be sure, including from the Sadducees, from the group that were trying to reform the Jewish faith from within, from the Essenes, from Jesus, from John. John the Baptizer and Jesus, out of this fiery cauldron, this hotspot, not only is life purified, but new life begins, and it continues to grow. I wonder, are there hot spots of that energy today, both near and far, for us? I think there are. Our response to violence, our response to terrorism, both individually and nationally and globally. Our response to the refugee crisis. Our response to people living on the fringes. Our response to a world that desperately needs the themes of Advent: hope, peace, joy, and love. Those are hotspots. Possibilities for something new. And I want to echo the call to worship that I used, or the opening prayer. We each have a job to do this Advent season. God is calling us to prepare the way, just as God called the prophets of old. God is doing a new thing through us, and sometimes despite us. And like a refiner's fire that destroys the old so the new may shine through, God is refining us and giving us courage. Courage to be messengers of justice and righteousness, and courage to be bearers of God's grace and God's light. And my hope and prayer is that God will ignite a fire within me, within us, that we may carry that light in the world. Amen.